Google's Pixel 4 is finally here, but was it worth the hype?
Plus, what does Broadband World Forum tell us about the future of the NBN?
And could Telstra really have built the NBN by now?
Vertical Hold is proudly sponsored by Casa Systems, taking Australian technology to the global market.
Welcome to Vertical Hold, behind the tech news, where we talk to Australia's leading technology journalists to get the stories behind the news of the week. I'm Alex Kidman, and for our 250th episode, we've finally broken the seal on the Vertical Hold time machine. We've been jumping back and forth through time, putting together this week's segments. But before we work out if it is indeed bigger on the inside than the outside, we'd better make room for Adam Turner. Adam, nothing can go wrong with us meddling with time, right?
Look, I'm not going to take a lesson in not changing history for Mr. I'm my own grandpa, all right?
Look, that was a mistake anyone could have made, and my grandmother was a saint anyway. Leaving that aside, it's been a big week to go behind the headlines in tech news. First of all, let's jump to the Google Pixel 4 launch, where I am going to have been joined. God, these tenses are terrible once you get into time machines, guys. Where I am going to have been joined by Jennifer Dudley-Nicholson from News, Tegan Jones from Gizmodo, and Fergus Halliday from PC World. So I'll just crank up the time machine. Adam, where's the handle go?
Thanks for joining us.
Now, I'm here at the local Google Pixel 4 launch. I'm surrounded by interested and, in some cases, caffeinated journalists. I've got Tegan Jones from Gizmodo.
Hi.
Fergus Halliday from PC World.
Hello again.
And Jen Dudley-Nicholson from News.
Greetings.
So the Pixel series of phones got announced, having been very, very heavily leaked beforehand overnight. And we've just been at the local launch having a little bit of hands-on time. Jen, what do you think?
I want more hands-on time. I find the camera stuff really interesting. Google's always done kind of like strange things with their cameras, and to bring in astrophotography is kind of a big call. Like I'm a camera nerd, and I want to see how that works. So until I can take it into a dark space, I'm going to reserve judgment. But on the face of it, it's interesting. Apparently they don't respect wide angles, Google. They just like telephotos. But apart from that, I'm keen to test it.
They're also talking up the whole motion sensing Project Solly thing. Fergus, we've seen this on a bunch of phones this year, really generally pretty badly. Do you think Google's cracked it? Is it actually useful?
I think we won't know until more people get the chance to go hands-on with the phone, honestly. Like you said, there have been so many attempts to make gesture controls and like hands-free interaction work in a way that's just as convenient or user-friendly as stuff like voice is, and most of those attempts have failed. So it's up on Google to see if they can actually pull that off. So for me, that's definitely the most interesting feature.
Tegan, anything else standing out from you? The new design, the same old classic Pixel, limited storage things?
Yeah, so the thing that stands out to me that I think probably surprised everyone was that it's actually coming in a little bit cheaper than what the Pixel 3 and Pixel 3 XL did last year. I think it's a good move because Google did cop a lot of flack for, charging a certain amount for what was really incremental upgrades from the Pixel 2. So considering that they've upgraded the camera a little bit and there's some cool new bits and pieces, I do like that they're coming in a little bit cheaper to remain competitive in market. But that being said, they really are sticking to that 64 gigabyte and 128 gigabyte storage. So I'm hoping that maybe they can, get it on up to maybe a crazy 256 next year. Ooh, yeah.
That's particularly painful, though, given that you now no longer get that whole unlimited storage thing with Pixel phones. They dropped it on the 3A, which was maybe acceptable because it was their cheaper phone, but not having it on the flagship, is that a bigger problem as, well, I think it is?
I think it's a bit stingy because, you're talking about, a Google phone, and the whole idea is to get you away from Apple and Samsung and get you onto Google services, and then they're not providing the exact services that you're after. And also, if you want this whole premium Google experience, then you want to be able to have as much storage as you possibly can to take a lot of night shots, maybe astrophotography that is not going to work out. One thing that I'm really keen to try on this phone as well, though, they have a neural core in this phone, and that transcribes audio. And I so want that in my life. There's potentially a really big time saving there if it works. And that's one of those cases where, it's a little bit creepy, but maybe I'm willing to trade off creepy for useful.
Yeah, I think every journalist that heard that screamed in delight. I think it really is useful, and it's really going to go after that market of people who are using Otter and the like. And like Jen said, if that works. Like what's so cool about it is that not only, transcribes sort of in real time, but the fact that you can, search for keywords, you can also search for key types of noise, so like applause or music, and so that way it'll actually timestamp whatever it is you're looking for. Huge time saver. But like Jen said, if it works, and I think that all the journalists in the room are very excited to put that through its paces.
Nest Wi-Fi, I thought, was a really interesting one this year because not only did they're making it better, which is fantastic, and I think Google does a pretty good job at getting internet to all parts of your home because that's how you use their services. However, adding the speaker to it and like basically adding listening devices all through your home via Google Wi-Fi, like that's useful to the point of sneaky. I'm not sure how I feel about that. And I know that they're saying that, you can turn off the microphones if you want to, and that's good. But it's on by default, and it's potentially in a lot of areas in your home that you didn't necessarily mean to put smart speakers.
Yeah, Google aren't the first ones to sort of tie up smart speakers and routers and mesh Wi-Fi system. This is definitely probably one of the more affordable and accessible and like wide mass market plays in that space. So really interesting to see what the implications of that are over the long term.
There's also really, really quickly a new Google Mini. Well, sorry, Nest Mini. I keep getting the branding wrong. Are we excited about, more bass and, blue?
I'm wondering if now the Nest Mini is going to randomly end up in people's Woolworths orders, like the Google Home Mini has for all year, which has been just showing up. So it will be interesting to see if they are going to continue to try and get that into people's homes that didn't necessarily ask for it.
No, you're Sherman and I'm Mr. Peabody. All right, Alex, stand back and give me a go at this thing. Let's set the Wayback Machine to catch up with Steve Collins, Senior Vice President with our podcast sponsor, Casa Systems. I caught up with Steve before he jetted out to Amsterdam this week for Broadband World Forum, and he had plenty to say about the future of 5G, the NBN, and the multi-technology mix. So this week, Broadband World Forum is running in Amsterdam, where all the big players get together to talk about the future of comms. And it's the perfect opportunity to catch up with our podcast sponsor, Casa Systems, to find out what's going to be big at Broadband World Forum this year. We're chatting with Casa Systems Senior Vice President of Access Devices, Steve Collins. Steve, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much for having me.
So, Steve, what do you think will be the big issues and trends at this year's forum?
For the last 3 or 4 years, been a really big focus on how to get fibre to everyone's home, kind of like how NBN was here 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But what's happened in recent years is that fibre to the home push has met a number of barriers, either logistically or commercially. It is hard to get fibre everywhere. And what we're seeing is that different technologies around the world are starting to catch up with gigabit speeds. You can now do G-fast over copper pair instead of having to do it over a fibre link. And you're also seeing the instigation of 5G technologies, which can go gigabit speeds. So the Broadband World Forum this year is showing a much more diverse range of access technologies. So a lot of new technologies and a lot of excitement at Broadband World Forum this year.
So as you were saying, we have the multi-technology mix in Australia now, so different people access the NBN in different ways. Are there any particular technologies or advancements you think that are coming along that will be particularly relevant to different technologies used for the NBN in Australia? Is there one that we should be keeping our eye on?
One that I think Australians need to keep an eye on is 5G, and it's not the first iteration of 5G. If you were to go buy a 5G handset today and connect it to a 5G network, the speed increases are modest and not going to set the world alight. And that's not really because of the technology. It's because of the spectrum that's been assigned to that technology. And spectrum is, think of it like the size of the freeway that gets built between two towns. The width of that freeway dictates how much traffic you can put down it. Yeah. With spectrum, it's auctioned by ACMA. They've only auctioned some 3.5 gigahertz frequencies and not that much of it really. Where it's going to get interesting is the next iteration of 5G in Australia, which is what they call the millimetre wave frequencies, which is in the 26 to 28 gigahertz. ACMA released a discussion paper on this a week or two ago, which talked about how they were going to license this frequency and who's going to use it. And they were talking about using that frequency primarily for fixed wireless services. And that means fixed wireless means broadband delivery, much like the fixed wireless service that comes from NBN. So that millimeter wave frequency, it has its own challenges that come with that frequency, how it propagates, how far it can go. But it is technically capable of delivering gigabit speeds, and it's real. And so at Casa Systems, we're investing a lot into that technology space with some exciting equipment we're showing at Broadband World Forum this year. So in Australia, I think everyone needs to watch who gets a piece of this spectrum pie when ACMA auctions it off in a year or two. That will dictate, once you get that asset, which corporate entity then takes those services to market. If NBN gets some, then I would see it as a natural progression for fixed wireless into maybe some new areas or some higher speeds. If one of the traditional telco operators gets some millimeter wave, then I would think they potentially could become a competitor to NBN, but only in certain areas, and that's probably limited in terms of how much they get. And then there's always the possibility that someone new and someone disruptive could come in and get their hands on some spectrum, much like TPG did recently with the other auctions that they participated in. So it's really going to come down to, in Australia at least, who gets their hands on that millimeter wave spectrum.
But with that millimeter wave spectrum, that doesn't have the same range as a 3.5 gig. So while in theory you could use it for some fixed wireless deployments, you couldn't replace, for example, the entire NBN fixed wireless network with it, could you? Because it just doesn't have that kind of reach. That's
exactly right. I really think that this millimeter wave spectrum is a new generation of technology, and it's a new generation of service. New business models need to be created, and this is a disruptive new technology, and it's really up to the telcos whether they want to be the disruptor or be disrupted, but it's coming.
So normally when we're talking about this kind of technology, we're talking about getting broadband to your house. But I noticed one of the things they're talking about at Broadband World Forum this year is how it's going to work in your house. They've got new connected home standards and new Wi-Fi management standards. Can you tell me what they're about and what kind of impact they'd have on your average user? So
we're talking about their Wi-Fi 6 or 802.11ax, which is the latest generation of Wi-Fi. It comes with it a number of really good advancements in Wi-Fi meshing, which is the ability for multiple access points to collaborate together and be able to propagate a signal through your home in harmony, if you like, working together rather than disparate access points, which is how it's been to date up to Wi-Fi version 5 or 802.11ax, AC. The actual mesh piece and the way they work together is reasonably well standardized in 11ax or Wi-Fi 6. Where there is still some disharmony, may not be the word, disagreement, is how the configuration, the management, and the provisioning of all these services onto all the different Wi-Fi mesh entities will work. There are some Broadband Forum standards on how to do that. It's an open alliance that puts that together. And there are also some proprietary companies that have moved quite early on trying to do this in their own native way. But we're at this real turning point now where Broadband World Forum is really promoting the open alliance method for Wi-Fi meshing. There's still some industry products you can buy from various vendors that are proprietary, and I think that will still be the case probably for the next 12 months or so. But in due course, I think by the end of 2020, we'll see mostly open alliance based Wi-Fi meshing.
Once that happens, do you think that we'll see the telcos get behind mesh networks more? Because I've noticed, well, a few telcos have talked about it a little bit. I think some of them have got extenders and stuff like that. None of them have really gone all in on mesh Wi-Fi. But from my experience, mesh Wi-Fi is one of the best ways to fix Wi-Fi problems around your house and actually get the most out of a fast broadband connection. Once we've got that more of an open standard, do you think it's more likely that your Telstras and your Optuses and some of your smaller ISPs as well will really back it and make it part of their solution to try and make sure that it's not that end mile in-house Wi-Fi that's causing people to complain that their NBN's no good?
I'd love to tell you that that's exactly what's going to happen. I have to admit to being a little bit skeptical. I've been in this industry a long time, and while technical performance is always highly regarded, cost often becomes more important, becomes a gating factor. And that cost of that Wi-Fi mesh product has been a barrier, I think, to a lot of telcos wanting to range those products as a standard product for their internet service offering. We all know, particularly in Australia, the RSPs are basically, brought brought to an equilibrium on performance by the NBN. They're all providing the same sort of service. So I would have thought this Wi-Fi meshing type product would be a great way to differentiate your service. However, what happens a lot of the time is most RSPs look to provide the most cost-effective gateway they can as their entry-level free product, and then they may try and upsell users to a high-performing product, but not many users, frankly, take up that offer. I think what has to happen is if you really want high-performing Wi-Fi in your home, you need to pay for the technology that has the features in it that is required. So I think there's an opportunity here for RSPs to genuinely differentiate by having Class A performance, if you like. But I haven't seen anyone go for it in a big way, and most of them still today will offer the most vanilla basic product they can just to give away, if you like, in a free service offering.
Great. All right. Well, it'll be interesting to see how that pans out over the next couple of years. Thanks very much for taking the time to join us on the show.
Great. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Absolutely typical. You give someone the keys to the time machine and they return it without filling up the gas tank. Anyone know anyone I can borrow some plutonium from? With Steve talking all things broadband, let's make a, shall we say, quantum leap back to the Google Pixel 4 launch, where I will have spoken to Jen and Fergus and Tegan about Telstra's place in the history of the NBN and how much damage a monopoly can do to communications in this country. Well, speaking of things that work, or in this case don't, and changing tack massively, yesterday was a big day for NBN news with the Telstra chair having some rather choice comments, and I know you've got some opinions on that, Tegan.
Yeah, a few things came out of yesterday from the Telstra chair. Of course, they took a huge aim at the NBN, basically saying that if the NBN didn't exist, I think that telcos could have provided faster and cheaper broadband for Australians. So huge call there. Telstra has never been particularly shy about being critical of the NBN, so it wasn't very surprising. But what was that one of the big things that people were looking at yesterday was whether the remuneration report was actually going to get passed from the board. Last year it did get voted down, so we were looking down the barrel of a potential board spill if it didn't make it through this year. But it did, and that included a 34% pay rise for Telstra CEO Andy Penn, which brings his pay packet up to $5 million. People weren't particularly happy about it, especially when the Telstra chair defended this during the AGM by comparing it to people like sports people and influencers and Fortnite players who earn millions of dollars. It seemed just very, very tone deaf, and it just...
Just a little.
A little tone deaf, considering the fact that in only 2018, Telstra laid off 8,000 employees and, then giving their highest executive a 34% pay rise. Not the best thing to be doing, and certainly not the best thing to double down and defend.
Jen, do you think this whole business of we would have done it cheaper and better is credible? I'll come on the record and say, I don't believe them, but maybe you have a different view.
I have a slightly different view, and I know that's weird because I'm known for apparently being a terrible person around the NBN. So even though they said that they could do it, they hadn't done it. And so this is, a lot of inaction that we'd seen because I think they were quite happy with the status quo. However, I know that when they started talking about the NBN, they approached Telstra, even under Sol Trujillo, who was a very interesting individual. I know that Telstra was saying that they could do it, and I think, honestly, at that point, they were majority government owned, I think they could have done a better job. And this is one of those what ifs, we'll never quite knows. I don't know if, it would have been fibre. I don't know how good it would have been. I don't know what the expenses would have been. I don't know what the wholesale cost would be to other suppliers, even if they were allowed to have other suppliers. It's an interesting thing for them to bring up at this point, to be honest, and maybe bring it up at a financial, results time. I can see why they would do that because obviously they're struggling under the leadership of the NBN. But I have heard previously from a lot of different ex-Telstra staffers that this was certainly on the cards. They were pitching hard for it. It didn't get across the line, and there's a lot of bitterness in the ranks about it.
You know, I've heard this from a lot of complaints from a lot of people as well, that, you know, Telstra is complaining about this monopoly that NBN has because it's government backed, etc. But it's the same.
Where have I heard that before?
Where have we heard that before? But you know, it's sort of the same complaints that everyone had about Telstra before, you know, NBN came in. Like, you know, they had monopoly of the telco market, so it really does come across as bitter, as in like there shouldn't be a monopoly unless it's us. Like, you know, based on past stuff. So it is a little bit interesting to say the least.
Well, that's just about it for another episode of Vertical Hold. But, oh, hang on, Adam. There's still a smidgen of fuel left in the time machine. I'm just going to pop back to that Google launch one more time. Thanks to Tegan, Fergus and Jen for making time to be on the show. Now, Jen, if people want to find you on social media, where will they find you?
In a hole. No, at Jen Dudley on Twitter.
And your work appears online at...
news.com.au and other places.
And Tegan, basically the same question.
You'll find me at Tegan_Rights on all social media, and I am the editor of Gizmodo Australia.
And Fergus, lucky last.
You can find my work on pcworld.com.au, and my Twitter handle is @cvamped, CVAMPED.
And of course, you can catch up with us on Twitter at VerticalHoldAU or via the Vertical Hold Facebook page. Before Adam does his shout out to you, the dear listeners, I've got to give an additional shout out to the good Mrs. Turner and Mrs. Kidman, our better halves, for putting up with us doing 250 episodes of this insanity. Because even though they've never said a single word on this podcast, it absolutely could not happen without them.
As usual, it's my job to bang on about the fact that we really do appreciate all your supports and shout outs and reviews and all your efforts to help us spread the good word. Vertical Hold is proudly sponsored by Casa Systems, taking Australian technology to the global market.
Circuits on, flux capacitor, fluxing.